But welcome, good morning for, America, and good afternoon for those in Europe, and, good late evening for everybody in Asia. We're here to, do a live question and answer session around the announcement that we did yesterday, which is that Nextcloud now has a official availability on TrueNAS devices. And I'm here with Morgan from IX Systems. I think I'll ask him to introduce himself, and then I'll introduce myself.
Well, good morning for me. So it's just after 8 o'clock in the morning in California time. I'm the SVP of Product Management for IX Systems, and IX Systems is the major sponsor and owner of the TrueNAS brand. And so we're very, very excited to be joining with Jason Nextcloud to both announce the partnership that we have together and then try and answer any questions today.
All right. And from my side, I'm Jos Portvliet. I'm one of the people who founded Nextcloud about 5 years ago already. And, honestly, we're very excited about this. There are a lot of TrueNAS devices out there, a lot of people doing interesting things with these devices. And we thought it's really great to have Nextcloud available on them in an officially supported capacity. And we got already some interesting questions. I even had to talk to some of our techies to be able to answer them. Because I think the first person who asked a question was, I hope I'm not butchering your name, by the way, Bostian Kadej. And they asked when the official Nextcloud plugin is being used for installation of Nextcloud, how to keep the jail and the Nextcloud code up to date. And that's a good question. This is actually now done by, the whole platform. So FreeBSD or TrueNAS is keeping the Nextcloud package up to date, so that if you use the update button in the TrueNAS web GUI, that would be enough to update your Nextcloud installation as well. The only thing you have to keep in mind here is that you cannot skip major Nextcloud releases. We do a major release about 3 times a year. So you should update your TrueNAS at least 3 times a year, but then I would hope you do that a bit more often than that, just for security reasons alone.
Mm-hmm. And just adding to that, when there is an update available, it will show in the web UI on TrueNAS. So then you can decide to click that button, do the update. There's no need to search for them. They'll be obvious through the web UI.
Yeah, wonderful. So that way, I think that should avoid work, because I know a lot of people who are manually running Nextcloud on TrueNAS devices, and that's, they have to manually keep it up to date. Mm-hmm. And related to that was a question about security. The question also then from Bostian was, how does the Nextcloud app take care of security and hardening? Mm-hmm. And so I talked a little bit about this with one of our engineers who worked on this, and he said that design choices have been made overall to prioritize security, even in some cases over convenience. So, for example, we are enforcing the use of SSL certificates, even if you don't have a domain name, which means that in that case you have a self-signed certificate, and you will even get warnings in the browser. Which, on the side note /rant, I still find amazing that browsers rather give you a warning about having a self-signed certificate and not give you a warning when you have no certificate at all. But technology, I guess. Yeah. And then the last question here was if the admin still has to go through the Linux-centric Nextcloud documentation to figure out how to implement security, etc. in the FreeBSD jail. And, the answer here is no, you don't. We've essentially taken care of that. So the whole setup is pre-configured. And in general, there is no specific work that we can think of that would need to be done or documented. Mm-hmm. So I think those are answered this way. Let me see what the next question is that we should address. So SME Productions, maybe this is a question for you, Morgan. The question from SME Productions was, I am looking for a storage solution that can also handle VM workloads for cybersecurity work, asking if this would be a good option.
Sure. So VM workloads can come in many varieties, but I assume the user is talking about VMware environments and virtualizing that way. If it is that, then VMware can effectively use TrueNAS as storage either via iSCSI or via NFS. So effectively, a system running TrueNAS can be configured for that application at the same time as it can run the Nextcloud plugin and provide the Nextcloud services. So a variety of different choices, and that's certainly the strength of TrueNAS, is that you can run many workloads at the same time if that's what your business needs.
All right. So exactly, it can do it. I mean, I think, and there are two options here with Linux and FreeBSD based versions.
Yeah, so as many of you know, within TrueNAS, we have started a new initiative last year called TrueNAS Scale, which is the Linux version of TrueNAS. At this stage, it's in the final stage of its beta process, and later this month will become a release candidate. Most of you who have TrueNAS experience have been using what was FreeNAS and is now TrueNAS Core, and that is a FreeBSD-based system. But the partnership that we have with Nextcloud is not specific to either of those. It will be applied both to TrueNAS Core and TrueNAS Enterprise, which are FreeBSD based, and it will apply to the Linux version, which is TrueNAS Scale. So our goal is to make it possible for you to run whichever one version is appropriate for your particular environment, and it may depend on other applications, not just including cloud, about which one is the best one for you to run.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Postjan had one more question. He asked if PKG update and upgrade the same as updating the jail plugin through the GUI, and if that also updates MySQL and PHP. My understanding is that the UI updates the plugin, which includes everything like MySQL and PHP, and you don't need to or shouldn't update using PKG by hand.
That's right.
You might know more details here, yeah.
Yeah, within TrueNAS, we have two ways of running applications, or three actually. We support VMs if you really wanted to run a complete VM environment and run Nextcloud in a VM, you can. We support jails, which are the FreeBSD version of containers, but they're very nicely isolated, and you can run Nextcloud in there. And a lot of the very expert Nextcloud users have done that. They've built their own jails and run Nextcloud. And then the third option is the plugin, and the plugin is really there for much easier deployment for normal users that don't want to do the sophisticated administration of running a jail. And with the plugin, we can have a consistent environment which our engineering teams can effectively test and collaborate on. And so we believe we can provide a very good, robust solution that way through that plugin without the need for use of package management types of capabilities and just using the update buttons, etc. So that's the goal: make it simple and reliable and secure.
Yeah, interesting. A related question is from Chris Ligler, again, apologies if I'm butchering any names here, who asks what the migration from the current plugin will look like, which is indeed a good question. Can you address this, Mark?
It is a good question. I believe that you'll be able to effectively install the new plugin and inherit the existing Nextcloud datasets, and so you should be able to do it. I don't have the answer in terms of whether there's any work necessary at all, but I believe that it can be done, and it's something that in our forums for TrueNAS we should address. So what we'll do is make sure that if there are any special advice that we need to provide in order to enable that, we will we'll make it available on the TrueNAS forums.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're currently running a plugin, then there'll be essentially it'll be an upgrade, but you should definitely check your settings and make sure that it all works after the upgrade and that it properly persists. But I'm guessing if you are currently running like a jail or a virtual machine, then of course you need to install a plugin and then really do a manual migration
Yep.
of your data over to the new plugin. That of course does not happen automatically.
Yep. The good thing is, in most cases, even though it's a manual process to move, say, from a jail to the Nextcloud, the data set that you are generally targeting Nextcloud at can be just inherited in the new plugin. You don't have to necessarily make it do a manual copy of all the data. So we will again review that. I think in most cases that will work, but we'll certainly assist users who are making that transition.
Yeah, well, that should work out just fine then. Another question from Borsian, who has a lot of questions, is if there's an auto update option for Nextcloud and the rest of the stack. But this is essentially something the UI takes care of, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Well, the auto update is the click on the button to do the update. We generally don't believe in auto updates. We think it should be a user's decision about when it happens, and you'd prefer to have it done on a Sunday morning as opposed to during the middle of the business week, etc. I've had Windows try and update my PCs in the middle of presentations. So no, not auto update, but an easy update with a click of a button. And as Joe's indicated, we do, you will have to update through each of the major Nextcloud releases. So that will be the one restriction on the process.
Right, exactly. That's, I think, a wise philosophy to not automatically update, but keep this under control of the users. That fits fairly well with our philosophy as well. I mean, we try to make it easy, of course, but at least, not stop your system from functioning at a time that might not be convenient to you. This is something users should have control over. Although I do think we should add to that it is important to stay up to date, so to say, and especially for security, right? This is an important thing. If you don't update regularly, then you risk, that malicious actors might gain access to your system. Obviously, staying up to date isn't a guarantee against security problems, but not staying up to date is an open door, let me put it that way, of course, to, the bad folks on this planet. And if you look at how many hacking issues there are recently, it's a bit nightmarish, I must say.
I think you're indicating, Jace, that you've got a roughly 4-month cadence, so effectively users should be expecting to update sort of at least once every 4 months, and maybe a little bit more frequently than that.
Yeah, that's for the major updates. So we have a mostly regular cadence. Every 6 weeks, there's a security and bug fix update as well. So I would expect there to be like a 6-weekly release cycle of the plugin as well. I have to see, but I think that makes sense because you want to get these security updates to the users in time. But these smaller updates should really be painless. I mean, we try to design them, of course, to be quick and easy and not contain anything that's risky. So really only bug fixes and sometimes an occasional little button here or there, but nothing big. So this is almost no-brainer to apply these. Of course, it does cause a very short time of downtime, but this is not. This shouldn't be a big concern. So we have a question from Sean Nugent asking if there are any issues or difficulties open right now around Nextcloud on TrueNAS. I don't believe there is anything open right now. It's pretty straightforward. Of course, you have the usual things, right? When you're running a free NAS device, you need to get it to a network connection, firewall. These things are still important. I mean, yeah.
Yep. One thing I would just alert users to is that the Collabora function is not built in natively into the plugin. So the Collabora is in general best hosted on a Linux system right now. So the way that can be hosted is either as a VM or on a bare metal machine. So that's probably the more awkward of the functions to integrate within the systems. Obviously, as we move to TrueNAS Scale, which is Linux based, then there are more options for making that a well tied in function within the Nextcloud environment. So that's probably the area that there'll be the most room for innovation and discussion in terms of how to best deploy it in a sort of more complex or larger environment.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does mean that the vast majority of other apps for Nextcloud, including Nextcloud Talk, which is what we're using right now, will be available just out of the box with one click. Of course, a lot of components of Nextcloud have optional parts that are needed, especially for scale. For example, for Nextcloud Talk, you have high performance backend, and this requires also a separate system, even separate IP address to run. So this isn't very trivial and is therefore not a part of the plugin, but is only necessary if you have calls with a large number of people. So overall, I think the standard availability of apps via the plugin should really be good. You should be able to install your favorite Nextcloud apps and keep your notes. The Nextcloud text editor is available for collaborative note taking, so you can have your rich text documents and edit them. So I think a lot of functionality is available out of the box. And for Collabora, yeah, this is a bit harder. It is nice, of course, to be able to edit Office documents, Microsoft Office documents, or the open document formats directly from the browser from within Nextcloud. There is a server run by Collabora. This is mostly meant for testing, though, but it is possible to use that to edit a document or two. Another option would be to run it on essentially an external system. It could even be on a Raspberry Pi these days because there's no Raspberry Pi support from Collabora, and then hook it into your Nextcloud installation. So there are a couple of ways, and I'm sure with the VM it is possible. With VM it is also possible. So,
Yep.
as it's not out of the box, unfortunately, I'm sure we will look and see if we can make this possible in a reasonably efficient way over the coming months. But ideas and help are welcome there because this would require, I think, work on the FreeBSD jail support in Collabora, and it's using like jail-like technology, container stuff, pretty deeply into the platform. So it's pretty hard to move this over. I understand.
Yep. I think a VM is likely to be the short-term solution for smaller deployments. Obviously, for larger deployments, it might actually be a set of Collabora servers. So there's a need to scale it out or scope it for particular deployment in terms of how best to support it.
Absolutely. If you're running at scale, then you want to separate the different components in any case to be able to scale them up individually, because every part, as usual, scales in a slightly different way. Nextcloud itself is rarely the problem because a PHP app scales horizontally very well. But something like Collabora requires then multiple application servers, and the database and the storage are, of course, also a bit more complicated. But luckily, there are solutions for that, like Scale. So let me look, because we have a few more questions and they're now coming in fast. Let me see. So there was a question then about the issues that I mentioned earlier. But as I said, like the main thing is, I mean, look, we try to make Nextcloud as easy as possible, just like, TrueNAS is as simple as possible, but you're still running a system on the internet. So, you will need to open a port in your firewall, connect it to your router in the right way. These things will always be there, but that is, I think, the harder part. But there was an interesting question from Gary Adams, who says, you're speaking of plugins and jails, and what is the difference? And maybe you can go a little bit deeper into that, Morgan.
Sure. So a jail is the FreeBSD operating system, sort of equivalent to containers, but as I said, it has a little bit more isolation capabilities, and so it's actually a more robust, almost VM-like environment from a FreeBSD point of view. The plugin uses the jail concept, so it's the foundation of plugins. But the plugins are also then made easy to deploy with a whole application within the TrueNAS environment. So it's a whole application that is then hosted by a jail, as opposed to a native jail within which you build or add applications. So that's the way to think about that difference. From a user point of view, it's a lot easier to click on a button and install a plugin than it is to create a jail and then from within the jail then start adding applications and stitching them together. So that's the difference in philosophy there.
So what you're saying is that a plugin does give you some of the main benefits of jails, the security
Yes.
and the separation,
Yep.
without the hassle of having to manually do a lot of stuff to get it up and running.
That's right. Yep. Some of our smarter users on TrueNAS have improved things within jails by writing scripts that automate some of the setup of these things, and then they have to manually maintain those scripts. And thank you for all the work for the people who have done those types of tasks. But yeah, plugins are an easier way to make that process work.
Right, but these scripts blur the lines a little bit then, because you get a bit of a middle ground. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting.
And certainly, our plan is to always, make all of these tools available so people have a choice about how do they operate. However, when it comes to the collaboration, by collaborating on a plugin, what we've done is we've created a very consistent environment for people to use, and because of that consistency, it's then easy for our engineering teams to collaborate and provide support on that configuration. So whilst we're very happy that people use Nextcloud in a jail, when it comes to support, it's very difficult for us to support it. If it's a plugin, then effectively we can add additional support. And our goal with this partnership is that, there's no legal support contract for the first 100 users, but we've got a consistent approach, and we'll try and do bug fixes, etc., as issues come up. But for people who want to deploy at scale with hundreds of users, then we will support jointly those installations. And so the plugin makes that possible because we can replicate any problems.
Yeah, exactly. It gives a more consistent experience that way, and it allows us to control the scalability and other features. Yeah,
that's right. Yep.
Interesting. All right. Sean asked a question. He said, from reading the forums, and he's apparently waiting for Scale to come out of beta, one major difficulty seems to be automated provision of certificates to the Nextcloud container. And if we have any comments on this subject.
Don't have any comments off the top of my head, but as the user indicated, we are still in beta, and so we've got a release candidate coming out at the end of this month. Each of these types of issues, if there's significant issues, gets reported as a bug, and our team is very diligent about working through that list. At this stage, we expect to get to the production or GA release of the Scale software in about February of next year, and hopefully all of these types of issues get resolved by then.
Exciting. Yeah. So my understanding is that right now the Nextcloud installation will generate self-signed certificates, but there are hooks to replace them with your own set of certificates if you have done this already, in the proper way, so to say. So that should then be working. Then Jeff asked, you should be able to use a cron job for systems update for TrueNAS, or is that not advised?
So so this is the question of the auto update and whether or not you want automated updates. there's nothing to stop you auto updating, and a cron job could be used. I personally wouldn't do it. I personally would prefer to decide when I do an update and make sure I know why and when I should do it, rather than um, uh, doing it automatically and not knowing when it will. Well, you could know that it will happen every Sunday morning. That's an advantage. But
True.
personally, I'd prefer to do it manually.
Yeah, I personally also like the control. But then again, I also store my files still in folders instead of just relying on search like a newer generation of computer users. So I guess the
Mm-hmm.
world evolves and changes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I understand that some users want to have it just happen. That's fair
Yep.
enough. Um, Let me see. So Sean asked a question about the scripts being part of the TrueNAS collaboration or outside the scope. So there is a script included with a plugin that lets you generate Let's Encrypt certificates.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the host name, the resolvable domain names, and all these things you have to kind of do yourself as a user.
Mm-hmm.
The,
Yeah. Again, is still open to support from our point of view. This is the best approach to deploying Nextcloud on TrueNAS. The comment about scripts and was really relevant to jails and a more do-it-yourself model for deploying Nextcloud, which is still
right.
possible, but is still just very hard for the engineering teams to support efficiently.
Yeah, exactly. So it works best out of the box if you use the plugin then.
Yeah, I mean, I think the does it work better? Um, I can't say that. Some of the scripts are very good,
True.
but is it supportable is the question. And for every support organization has to have a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 support type model, and so it's very important that most of the support work can be done without having a PhD in how to run Nextcloud on TrueNAS.
Yes, exactly. So I guess that gets us a little bit to the support and to what people can expect when they scale up. So of course we hope that this solution will work for private users and very small businesses, perhaps just out of the box. Um, we generally at Nextcloud strive to make ourselves scarce, to make it so that people don't really need us at a small scale. But of course, for a larger installation, it becomes nearly inevitable that you will bump in things that could be done better. Scaling up is just inherently a hard problem. And at that point, of course, also, frankly, people will want different things. They want more specific things. They need certain capabilities in a certain way. They might need certain optimizations. So then our services essentially jump in, right, that we offer together.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Our goal, yeah, sorry, please go ahead,
I was
Morgan.
going to say, yeah, we have very similar goals, obviously, within TrueNAS, and this is one of the reasons why I think this partnership is going to work well. We have a consistent open source philosophy that makes it easier to collaborate, um, and obviously, making things easier and helping educate people as they learn how to deploy these newer systems is important to our mission. And we think this collaboration will help that process along very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, from our side, we're particularly excited about the user base. We always love, people taking back control over their data and keeping it in house, and doing interesting things with it. I mean, one of the things I really love about Nextcloud is sometimes like the different use cases you see and interesting things people do with it. One of the most fun ones I've seen, and I wonder if a TrueNAS device is useful for this at some point, was use of somebody who had made a little like self-contained Nextcloud system. I think it was Raspberry Pi based that they used at a wedding, and they had basically created an open Wi-Fi network and asked all the wedding guests to connect to it. And instead of the usual, password portal you then get on your phone, it would pop up a Nextcloud file drop. So you could drop in files, and they asked all the guests to upload their photos there, which was, of course, really nice because at the end of the wedding, they had all the pictures from everybody. And I mean, let's be honest, some of the pictures you might not want your grandpa to post on Facebook. It's nice to have that level of control. So yeah, that was a very creative use of Nextcloud. And they also mentioned that the benefit of asking everybody to connect to a Wi-Fi access point that has no internet is that you get much less disruptions during the wedding. So I really look forward to see what the TrueNAS community will do with Nextcloud and what interesting, cases they will find to use it for.
Yep. So we're very excited about the partnership as well. The two largest plugins for TrueNAS until now have been Nextcloud and Plex. And Plex is obviously for home video management, as well as managing commercial videos and being able to stream them and view them at home. So two very good applications, and there are several other applications out there that also have very good numbers of users. But yeah, our goal is to sort of help people build those environments, whether it's building something for your family or a small business, but then obviously also for larger businesses and organizations like schools and universities, etc. We think the collaboration really scales very nicely and can help a lot of organizations that want to protect their data and not have it searchable by Google or Microsoft, and who want the benefits of bandwidth locally and not have to cope with the delays and bandwidth constraints of going across the internet. So we think there's a lot of opportunities there for people to build better infrastructure.
Absolutely. One of the other interesting things you can certainly do with a TrueNAS system and running Nextcloud on it is to keep it, for example, behind your firewall. One of our customers is the German federal government, and you can imagine they care a fair bit about security. And one of the things they do is they just firewalled their Nextcloud instance completely off from the internet. The German radio and television, I think they've doing a similar thing where they're actually running two Nextclouds, one that is completely on the internal system and one that is accessible from the outside. And then they have a number of employees who specifically are working with video files and such. And so the journalists who are in the field, let's say Afghanistan is sadly not a wonderful example, but it is, of course, a real life case where journalists go. They record an interview with somebody, often even on their iPhone. They use the auto upload function from Nextcloud to then upload it to the Nextcloud, to the office, essentially. Whenever there's Wi-Fi, it'll start uploading and even, continue after it's interrupted. So this works pretty reliably. And then from within the headquarters, somebody will then move these video files after verifying them to the internal Nextcloud. So there's kind of a manual human check, which really keeps risks, from, causing problems. I mean, you can imagine press organizations are, of course, often targeted by a variety of bad actors, both for ransomware, but also certain rogue state actors. And yeah, you can do really unique things if you control the infrastructure rather than running it at some, big tech giants data centers. And I think this is really one of the advantages of TrueNAS and Nextcloud together will lie, where businesses can regain this control and say, look, as you mentioned, the bandwidth, you keep stuff in-house, keep it on your network, which of course gives you much higher data transfer speeds often. I mean, if you have fiber between, your, data closet, so to say, that obviously goes a lot faster than over the World Wide Web. And even between different departments, because Nextcloud has this nice federation capability, where if you have two offices, let's say East Coast and West Coast, they can both run their own Nextcloud on their own FreeNAS device. You can connect the two via Nextcloud Federation, and people can still seamlessly share files between the two, and still benefit from the local bandwidth as well at the same time. So there are some really interesting use cases there, I'm sure. Yeah,
Yep.
where you
Yep.
get the control, right, of this self running your infrastructure that gives you benefits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Certainly, one of the things that we've noticed is that a lot of organizations are now storing a hell of a lot more video than they used to. And video from a data storage point of view is not just one order of magnitude, but 2 to 3 orders of magnitude worse from a storage capacity point of view. So
Yeah.
one of the things between the two organizations is none of us are charging for capacity. So basically, you get capacity by providing extra hardware, and your capacity grows. These days, you can build very big systems. We've recently started building 20 petabyte systems in one rack of equipment.
Wow.
And so the ability to get sort of effectively unlimited video capacity by using the two company software, I think, is fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, I can certainly see that being used, and that, of course, again ties together very nicely with the high bandwidth, where that flexibility is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, we also got a few more questions, so let me try and get those answered before we wrap it up, because it's already 40 minutes in. So Luke Engstrom asked, where do you see the long-term future of self-hosted clouds such as Nextcloud? They see a future where every citizen has their own appliance and hosted services free from bloat and pretense. That's a hard question. I mean, I don't know, I think the world will move to a hybrid model. I think for every person to have their own Nextcloud on TrueNAS at home, I don't see that happen. I think it is just a little too complicated
Mm-hmm.
for most people to run it. But I do really like to see kind of, I mean, there is something in between putting everything at like 5 big tech companies and putting
Mm-hmm.
everything at home. And that something in between doesn't even necessarily have to be a small company, right? I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
you're with a group of like a dozen friends and one of them is technical enough, then they can run a free NAS at home, a TrueNAS system at home, put
Yep.
Nextcloud on it, and make it available for the others. I also
Mm-hmm.
see like small charities doing things like even today I bumped into a small organization that's basically asking every member to pay like the same amount of money, and they collectively then pay the cost from some hardware in the data center where they then manage their own Nextcloud and a couple of other open source services.
Mm-hmm.
I really think there is future in such models, honestly. I mean, what do you see, Morgan?
Yeah, we see the same thing, that effectively there will be a hybrid type model. The people with skills and with the desire for privacy and or more performance will be the people who lead this in the adoption of these technologies. And what is happening is that as people go through.
Amazon had that capacity, so they're running their infrastructure on top of that. And that's perfectly fine, of course. And I definitely see a lot of companies and maybe schools and universities offer a TrueNAS system with Nextcloud on it. So instead of having all the data at Google from when you're a child until you're, well, old, um, there'll be data at your company, which might run their own TrueNAS or Nextcloud instance somewhere. There might be data from your soccer club, which runs in another place. There is data from, I don't know, another hobby that you have, maybe a church, you know. There's your private data, which maybe you put in a charity, and there is data at another employer that you're currently using that uses maybe Google then, so be it. And your university is hopefully, well, I would definitely expect the university to really care about the privacy and control. Schools even more. Would be lovely, of course, if they would run stuff themselves so that they can control also when to delete the data, right? I mean, as a student, if you leave, you don't
Mhm.
want everything that you did on the computers there to remain for all eternity, which is pretty much the case with Google, right? Why would they delete anything? They don't really want to do that, I think. And, if your university deletes it after 3 or 5 years, I mean, not your diploma and these things, but, I don't know, the pictures you uploaded, so to say. I think that's a good thing, and this level of distribution, I think, is a good thing by and large, because it just makes it harder for whatever bad actor you're worried about being state, or maybe just a ransomware attack, to find all your data and abuse all of it. I think that's just a step forward there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this partnership will definitely contribute in a positive way, in this way, to a more distributed, world of data, so to say, which I think is really a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. There were a couple of more questions. Let me see. So one, Rami asks, for who does not have a real IP and wants to connect through an open VPN server, can this be done for the Nextcloud jail, Nextcloud plugin, I suppose? Do you know this, Morgan?
Yes, that should be possible, and it's something that we generally want to allow people to do, is through OpenVPN access their SMB and NFS shares, but also access their plugins. So yes, that should work. I haven't personally tested it, but it's certainly an area that we would view as a problem if it wasn't working.
All right, that's good news then. Yeah, I have also, well, I have currently a fixed IP address, but I had a while without one. And honestly, mine also doesn't allow me to use port 443. So I have to run my server on 444, which is, of course, quite annoying. I always consider one of the benefits of Nextcloud that it runs on simply port 443. You don't need any other complicated port setups, which means if you're at like a hotel network where everything is locked down, you can still access your Nextcloud. But of course, there are some situations where actually you really need another way to get out on the internet. So it's good to know that OpenVPN is possible with that. Will asks if there's some features of Nextcloud that people may not know about. Do you have another week, Morgan? I mean, this is a big question, because there are so many. The number of apps that is available for Nextcloud. I mean,
Yep.
Check out apps.nextcloud.com, because there is so much different functionality, like password managers. There is also, for example, a kind of a map location tracking app. Obviously, not tracking by Google, but for yourself, so that you can track where you have been, and later make maps of that. There's even a Nextcloud Maps app, so you can try and get away even from Google Maps, which, by the way, is really hard. But there are alternatives, of course, OpenStreetMap, and this is, of course, what's being used by the Nextcloud Maps app. So beyond the basics, and then I'm talking about the audio and video calls that we're having now, as well as the file sync and share and the calendar, contacts, and mail, there are like 100 other functions, things that Nextcloud can do, and that you should check out. Like, I don't know, you can replace Google Forms. There is even an app that you can use to let other people make appointments with you in your calendar. So kind of like a Calendly kind of thing. An app to do polls, an app for a knowledge base, project management. The list is endless. So this is a question I basically can't answer.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
There's also a question about what does TrueNAS bring to the Nextcloud experience. It's a good question. Obviously, you can run Nextcloud on a standard server and just run it by itself, and everything works fine. TrueNAS is all about unifying storage and services. So the advantage of TrueNAS is that you run Nextcloud on TrueNAS. You get a bunch of data management capabilities from our use of ZFS. So effectively, you get free snapshots, and you've got the ability to replicate data, and you've got scrubbing of the data so that you don't lose any of the information within Nextcloud. So lots of good things to make it robust. But then you can also run additional services on the same system. So you can run Plex if you want to run a home entertainment system. You can store data through SMB if you wanted to just have also some other services. And as one of the previous questions alluded to, you can also run virtualization environments as well. So the idea of TrueNAS is flexibility and then robust data management, and hopefully over the lifetime of the system, we just reduce the headaches of managing large amounts of data and large amounts of drives.
Yeah, exactly. I think the key in a way is, of course, convenience, right? I mean, in the end, software can always do everything if you write the code and do the work. But
Yep.
there's a convenience of running a nice integrated platform like TrueNAS and having Nextcloud on there with one click, have it update very easily, externally. Because if you're running your own Nextcloud, you don't need to just update Nextcloud. You need to update PHP, Apache, MySQL, and these things also have dependencies. So there are issues sometimes with lockstep that, if you're on too old a version of PHP, you can't update Nextcloud anymore, or the other way around. And of course, with the plugin being maintained by us together, by iX System and Nextcloud, that gives you a bit of confidence, first of all, that there are people taking care of making sure that these things don't break, people who know what they're doing, right? Doesn't mean it'll never break, because it continues to be software, computers, and there are still arrays that can flip bits. But yeah, you have, I think, a greater degree of confidence and robustness. And ZFS is, of course, a really good feature in that regard. And it is easier. It saves you time. So you get a combination of a little more certainty and convenience. I mean, isn't that like having your cake and eating it too?
Sure.
It doesn't get any better, right?
Yep.
So
one question I'd like to answer is from Dan B. Does this mean that the Nextcloud plugin will have less bugs and work better with TrueNAS? And yes, we've got a mutual marketing agreement. There'll be no more bugs in future. Of course not. There will be bugs. The difference is that by collaborating, we think we can we can record the bugs, we can have our engineering teams discuss things together, and we can resolve them. So what we hope is that we'll have a better longer term experience for users, and we'll treat each bug with the respect it deserves and work out how to resolve it, whether it's on the TrueNAS side or the Nextcloud side. So that's the goal of the partnership, and we think over the coming years that'll mean a much more improved experience for users.
yeah, exactly. I mean, less bugs. Yeah, that is essentially, hopefully, at least the direction that we're going. I mean, together we can. The thing is, we bring together, I think, a piece of expertise, right, on the platform and on the application, and that should definitely allow, the combination to result in a more reliable experience. Now, I do believe there was one more thing we needed to talk about. And I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about the Mini X Plus. Morgan, can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, the Mini X Plus is our top-end small platform. It's for office environments. It has 5 hard drive bays and 2 SSDs, and it's all very compact, and it's a very nice package, very quiet. And so as part of this partnership, we decided to make available a Mini X Plus as a giveaway for a competition. And what we'll be providing is the links for that on the various community forums to enter that competition. And the competition is weighted towards people who are prepared to learn or already know about Nextcloud and TrueNAS. So go join in the activities, and then at the end of that process, we'll have a lot of effectively raffle tickets in the system, and we'll draw a ticket and work out who the winner is. But and that winner will effectively get Mini X Plus, and preloaded with Nextcloud, so that they can go and um, um, build their home systems or donate to their charity or whatever organization they think would benefit from that Mini X Plus.
Cool. So I understand it has 20 terabyte of storage.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. Like,
Yep.
it's, I mean, for a small business, I suppose you'll eat it up, but for a home user, that is definitely a lot of storage.
Yep.
It does, of course, have Nextcloud pre-installed as well, which definitely is worth mentioning.
Yep.
So the more you participate, the more chance you have of winning. Correct, Morgan?
Yeah, that's right. So there are a bunch of activities that you can go do, and you then get points, which are like additional raffle tickets, and so we're rewarding a little bit of energy, and not just entering the competition with a click.
Cool, cool, cool. Very cool. So there is a link pinned below for the video. Should be visible there, so people can go and click that to learn more about it. The
Mm-hmm.
giveaway will run for 2 weeks, so everybody have 2 weeks to engage, participate, and increase your chances of winning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are
Yep.
even more prizes. There's a Western Digital Black or I think passport device and swag pack, and we have some other cool giveaways. So
Mm-hmm.
get
Yep.
involved and good luck.
Yep.
All right, I think, Morgan, we've talked for almost an hour. I'm sure there are more questions, but I think we should wrap it up and leave the rest of the questions for maybe another time. I'm sure we'll
So,
have more announcements coming in the future. Nice things around the partnership. Thanks a
mm-hmm.
lot for this. It's been
Okay.
really nice collaborating with you and the crew.
It's been a pleasure, and look forward to the online dialogues that will come from this collaboration. And thanks again, Jos, for hosting.
Pleasure. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good, well, day or evening, depending on where you are. And good luck in the raffle.
Mm-hmm.